Welcome everybody. So welcome to the IRG premise. You know that IRG is an association of independent regulators. And we use this premise especially for all our technical meetings, but it was also the opportunity to welcome this public debriefing of BEREC. So today I'm with Johannes Gungl, who is the incoming chair, so he will be next year chairman of BEREC, and he will present you more specifically our midterm strategy and the work program for next year that will be launched under public consultation. Okay, as for the two first public debriefing, I will debrief you by this kind of main chapters that I want to put the spotlights on this year: enhancing connectivity, safeguarding an open environment, and reinventing BEREC from within. So I will not list all the documents that you see here. You will see the document, and I will go into details on these documents. My main message is that you will see that we have been working. I don't know if we have been working well. You will appreciate, but we have been working much. And today we are delivering a very important part of this year's works program. So I propose we begin with this connectivity chapter, and so you know that more specifically this year we have enhanced the working group that was in charge of roaming, to not only roaming but all mobile and roaming issues. And so you will see the first results of this extension. And without waiting, I give the floor to Blaise Souris-Lavergne, who is co-chair of the Mobile Expert Group, to present us the work done by BEREC. Please, Blaise, you have the floor.
Thank you, Sébastien. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm going to tell you about two documents that we have been working this year on. The first one relates to a joint report from BEREC and RSPG on facilitating connectivity in challenge areas, and the second one is a preliminary report on monitoring of mobile coverage toward the common position. So the first one, facilitating mobile connectivity in challenge areas. This report is pretty much a compilation of initiatives that have been done in European countries to provide mobile connectivity in areas where connectivity is not easy. And we have identified 4 types of challenge areas. The first one is really the indoor coverage. It's an issue because obviously it's difficult to provide connectivity through walls because of walls attenuation. And we have looked at several solutions, going from a good evaluation of what are the building laws, the use of Wi-Fi, the use of repeaters, the use of small and femtocells, the possibility to roll out distributed antenna systems in buildings. There is also a consideration with regard to construction regulation to help enhance connectivity indoor, and the possibility of private mobile networks at some places. That's the first thing tackled in the first challenge area tackled in the report. The second one is regarding transportation means. So mainly when you are in car or in a train or in a subway. And in this solutions that the report is describing is the use of network sharing, the recourse to coverage obligations, and the possibility of providing information that is public and localized on the coverage, so as to enhance, to give an incentive to operators to roll out at these places. The third area is about non-profitable areas. It's really places where the cost of a rollout of a network is high and the potential benefits are low. And again, the possibility to have coverage obligations in licenses is looked at, the possibility of having a network sharing, and also to have a concerted approach between the public and the private sector, for example, that can go through public-funded programs. And finally, we've got a melting pot of other areas. We have identified 3 challenge areas, such as protected areas, national parks, or historical sites. Also areas where not all operators are present, and areas where the quality of service is not to the level that is expected. So in this report, we've got these areas identified. We've got some solutions that are described, but still the report recognizes that all solutions are not always without limitations. So we are saying that we recognize there's some potential limitations, and we give example. This report has been drafted by both BEREC and RSPG experts that have been working together to provide that. And there will be a public consultation on the report once it has been approved both by BEREC and RSPG. So let me go to the second document on which we have been working on this year. And this one is a preliminary report in view of a common position regarding monitoring mobile coverage. First of all, we recognize there is variations in estimating and presenting mobile coverage throughout Europe because there are different ways to measure it. And these variations leads to inconsistencies for the mobile operators and also for those that are providing digital services that are present in different countries. In each country it's a different way, and so that provides some inconsistencies. We see that some NRAs seek to provide some reliable information on what is the mobile coverage they've got in their countries. So what we did in the preliminary report, what we tried to do, first of all, is to define some common vocabulary about mobile coverage with a list of characteristics that are constitutive of a mobile coverage. And we've identified 5 characteristics. First one is the service that is monitored. So it could be voice, internet, SMS, or specialized services. Second characteristic is the user location. The coverage is not the same if you are indoor, if you are outdoor, or if you are in transportation. The third one concerns the user equipment. You don't have the same performance or the same coverage depending on which type of handsets you are using. The fourth characteristic is about the performance indicator. And there's a variety of performance indicator for mobile coverage. It goes from the radio frequency signal levels through parameters related to the quality of service or to parameters related to the quality of experience. And the fifth characteristic that we have identified is service time availability. Is the service available 90% of the time in a year or 95% of the time in a day? So these kind of things. The second part of the report look at key features of coverage maps that are provided for public information. And we are looking at the accuracy and the transparency of the maps that are provided to the public. So with these 2 features, it's a first step. So it's a preliminary report. It's a first step for our BEREC work towards a common position of BEREC on this subject. And so what we will follow is next, we are looking for views from stakeholders on what we've done. That will be collected during the public consultation that we launched today until the 8th of November. And these inputs will serve for the work of BEREC, internal work of BEREC, to prepare the common position that we would like to submit for a second public consultation in the first quarter of next year. And with that, I finish with these 2 subjects and give the floor back to Sébastien.
Thank you very much, Blaise. So as you can see, BEREC is really committed on the political objectives of the moment. Connectivity, mobile networks that have not been so much a focus for BEREC from now on, except on the roaming issue. And so we are delivering. Sometimes it takes a little bit more time than we hoped because it's quite technical. But especially on this question of mobile network coverage, I mean, today we can consider that it's a little bit weird that we don't have a common way to look at mobile coverage in Europe. But it's not a simple question. So we go step by step on that. And so we wanted to issue this first report and to call for inputs to complement our work to reach a common position, hopefully next year. And we also are really open to cooperate with other bodies on this important subject of mobile, because in certain, I mean, the EU framework doesn't give today a clear competence to national regulators on the spectrum issue. So we have to cooperate with another body, which is the Radio Spectrum Policy Group. Okay, very quickly, we also issue today a report on the convergence between fixed and mobile networks. So it's based on the results of 2 surveys among operators and national regulators, because obviously convergence between mobile and fixed networks is something that is more and more generalized over Europe, and we wanted to look at the network part of this convergence and how do regulators deal with it. What you will see is that in particular most of regulators over Europe are looking at backhaul issues, sometimes with regulatory tools, sometimes with monitoring tools, not only from the same legal basis. So there is some you can see that there is that regulators are taking advantage of the flexibility of the current framework. So there is no one-size-fits-all approach regarding this issue, but this is a concern of preoccupation in many countries, and so you will look at the report for further details. And now I propose to go to our further chapter, which is the open environment. So we are issuing today's 3 very important topics. And now I give the floor to Frode Sørensen, co-chair of the Net Neutrality Expert Group. Please, Frode, can you present us the 2 first documents?
Thank you. I will present 2 items related to net neutrality that we are publishing today. The first one is about the net neutrality regulatory assessment methodology, which has been consulted already. It was sent for public consultation in June and July, and we have processed responses and are publishing the document today. The objective of this document is to support the implementation of the regulation 2015-2120, which is the open internet regulation, for national regulators. And this methodology also provides a measurement methodology more in detail about the Internet Access Service. This methodology is also intended to be used for the BEREC net neutrality measurement tool, which I will present afterwards. The main topics that are addressed in this methodology are the following. The speed, on the next slide. The speed, delay, and packet loss measurements, they are defined in more detail than in the Net Neutrality Guidelines. Furthermore, measurements of net neutrality compliance are defined on a more general level. This is a more research-related area, so we have stayed at a more general level regarding these recommendations. Furthermore, we emphasize that accuracy of the measurement results is important and this is covered in the end user environment chapter and the assessment chapter of the document. And finally, the certification of the measurement methodology, measurement mechanisms, as it's called in the regulation, is also covered. And this is a relatively new and complex topic, and therefore only high-level guidance is given in that regard. Looking into the stakeholder consultation and the responses we received during consultations, we can summarize these comments into 4 different types. We received comments related to reliability of the measurement results, in particular the approach we have chosen about crowdsourcing. Secondly, we received comments related to the use of standards. Third point, we received many detailed comments related to quality of service measurements, for example, the usage of protocols like TCP and HTTP, etc. And finally, we also received questions that were actually more related to the interpretation of the regulation and then the BEREC guidelines, which were actually not in scope of the current document and considered to be out of scope of the consultation. How did BEREC handle these comments? We are maintaining the core measurement principles, the crowdsourcing approach. We do this because we believe measurements in multiple environments is important, so this methodology will support both fixed access when using browsers typically, and also mobile apps in the mobile access. Furthermore, we think it's important that measurements can be performed by ordinary end users, so they can check their own internet access, And furthermore, it's important that we reflect as closely as possible the end user environment of the real world internet usage. Regarding standards, we are aware that crowdsourcing measurement setup is a new approach which is not covered in international or European standards, but we also foresee that the BEREC document presented today is a first step regarding how standardization can be done of this kind of measurements. And finally, we also did several minor updates due to clarifications and modifications that were mainly done through explaining the design decisions more in detail. Then moving on to the next item, the Net Neutrality Measurement Tool and the related specification report, which is published today. This measurement tool is described in detail in the specification that is published. It describes how a measurement tool can be developed. And in parallel to adopting this document at the plenary meeting of BEREC, it was also decided that BEREC will initiate the development of software for such a tool. And this tool will cover both measurement of the Internet Access Service, mobile and fixed, but also assist in detecting potential net neutrality issues. Key features of the tool are the following. It will be based on open source software. End users can initiate their own measurements, and furthermore, it will be based on the BEREC regulatory assessment methodology as I presented now. Finally, this tool is based on a modular opt-in approach, which means that individual national regulators can decide whether they want to use the system when it's developed, and if they want to use it, they can also choose how to use it, which parts of the system to use. This is important since some NRAs already have a running system, so it's a flexible approach where each NRA can adapt according to what they need in each country. What does this tool cover, or this development project of the tool? What does it cover? As explained, it will be based on open source software, and it will contain, of course, a measurement server, which can be used for measurement clients when measurements are done. And it's important for us that we can also cover measurements of individual applications in order to check the net neutrality issues more in depth. So examples of this kind of individual applications that we want to check is port blocking, DNS manipulation, proxy detection, performance of web browsing, video streaming, voice over IP, and peer-to-peer. This is a list of possible functions that can be included in the software. So depending on the tender process and the bidders during this tender process, it will then be decided finally actually which of these functions that we will be able to cover in the first version. It's important to cover both mobile clients. We foresee Android and Apple platforms are necessary to cover, and also to cover fixed agents through a web browser. And we also emphasize data collection and storage of the data in an open data format, so it's accessible, easily accessible data. Furthermore, in addition to providing software, we also will install a reference system, which will be an instance, running instance of the system, where we can do acceptance test, and we can use this for reference measurements. And we also will provide a portal for BEREC Office where measurement results can be published. This means also that the project from BEREC's side will not contain tools for individual NRAs, but based on an open source software, NRAs can use this software to implement their own national systems. And as it's explained already, this is an opt-in system where each NRA can choose how to use the system nationally. Finally, about the timeline for this development project. The preparations of the tender is starting immediately, and we intend to launch the tender early next year, hopefully by the end of the first quarter, but anyway early next year. And after the open tender process, the project is intended to start late 2018. We foresee around 1 year's development time of the software, which means that it should be finalized in 2019. And in that point in time, it's also possible for national regulators to implement their own national tool based on this platform. So this is it for the net neutrality items.
Thank you very much, Frode. So now BEREC is totally engaged in this story. We were for the moment discussing about the opportunity to do it, about common specifications of tools that may be used at national level, but finally we decided to have a common tool. It's an opt-in system, so there is the sufficient flexibility at national level to use it or not. But I think it's a good illustration as what I explain often when trying to explain what is BEREC. BEREC is a little bit, like farmers that decide to be in a cooperative together to be stronger. So here, this is the case. We put our forces together thanks to the BEREC office that will organize all this tender procedure and development of the tool. And we will be stronger to face this net neutrality challenge and to defend an open internet in Europe. I think it's also something concrete because in the end it will the idea is to give the possibility to NRAs to open this tool to the consumers, and we, you know, what we are dealing with is BEREC. It's sometimes very indirect and technical, and for one time it's something quite concrete we're working on. Okay, thank you very much once again, Frode. And now I will pass. No, there is the video. Yes. Sorry, I have to show you a video, because as we are going concrete now, we want to make some pedagogy and explanation to the European citizen about what is net neutrality. So we try to make a little video to explain what is net neutrality. I think it's not long, 2 minutes, something like that. So please enjoy our video. I hope you will appreciate it.
Slow internet speed for particular web pages, blocked access, extra charge for high speed to selected internet content, impossible to use your mobile phone, downgraded photo or image quality. Did you know these could be breaches of the EU net neutrality rules? Wait, do you know what net neutrality actually is? In a few words, net neutrality means open and non-discriminatory internet for all. There can be no half measures when it comes to internet access. The European Union has adopted a regulation on net neutrality that protects the rights of all European consumers and businesses to access all available lawful content and applications. This is only possible if internet service providers treat internet traffic equally, allowing consumers to choose their applications, subject only to 3 exceptions allowed on lawful grounds. Net neutrality creates an even playing field among both large and small content providers. It's great for consumers. They can access everything they want online. Who is in charge of this very important issue? Since 2010, BEREC has supported the EU institutions and the national regulatory authorities to deal with this subject by investigating it before many others. BEREC was asked by EU legislators to write the Net Neutrality Guidelines. During the consultation process, around 500,000 responses were received. These guidelines help the national regulators to implement the single European net neutrality regulation in a coherent way, as they got the power and the obligation to assess internet traffic management, commercial practices and agreements, and to effectively enforce the regulations. But detecting a net neutrality breach is not so easy. How will the national regulators exercise this new power? In order to further support national regulators in preventing breaches of net neutrality rules, BEREC has prepared a regulatory assessment methodology which accompanies the Net Neutrality Guidelines. It will help national regulators, consumers and businesses in measuring the performance of internet access services and for detecting traffic management practices applied to or impacting those services. What is next? BEREC has further ongoing activities in place to support the national regulators to implement the net neutrality rules and will continue its work in this area diligently.
Here we are. Thank you for your attention. And now, so we have one last but not least point in this open environment chapter, and now I give the floor to Anaïs Legouguec, co-chair of the Market and Economic Analysis Expert Working Group. Please, Anaïs, you have the floor.
Thanks, Sébastien. Yes, today we are launching the public consultation regarding our report. The full name of the report is the report on the impact of premium content on ECS markets and the effect of devices on the open use of the internet. So the report analyzes the effects from 2 sectors. The premium content sector, because we observed a rising trend of convergence strategies between content and ECS, and we wanted to analyze what kind of impact this could have on ECS markets. The second sector that we analyze in this report is the device industry. Our objective is to analyze whether devices may challenge the general objective of an open internet in terms of how end users can practically use internet on their devices. So the public consultation will end on the 8th of November, and so we also hope to collect views from stakeholders and the feedback regarding the analysis we conducted in the report. And the final version of the report is planned to be published at the very beginning of next year. So in a bit more detailed manner, regarding the premium content section of the report, The definition of premium content that we used in the report is actually tailored for the report. What we consider to be premium content is content that is sufficiently valued by consumer to potentially make them switch ECS providers. So we made a snapshot of the practices that we observed across Europe regarding the type of bundling practices that we observed. We observe bundling practices of premium content with broadband access, but we can also observe bundling practices with mobile services. We see that there are different types of bundlings. You can have simple discounts that are offered when you have a joint purchase of electronic communication services and premium content. So this falls under the category of mixed bundling. But you can also have content that is only accessible if you also purchase an ECS. So this type of practices is called tying. And we, in the report, we analyze the benefits and drawbacks that can derive from those types of practices. Among which we find, for example, those kind of practices are the opportunity to have synergies that can be developed, but they also bear the risk of leveraging market power, because often it's only the biggest ECS players that have that can afford to engage in convergence strategies. So in general, the effect on ECS markets is to be analyzed on a case-by-case basis. And the report elaborates further on the regulatory responses that were taken across Europe on that. Regarding the devices and their potential interaction with the net neutrality, so the issue in this section is not discussed in terms of access services, because this is safeguarded by the European Regulation 2015-2120. Here we're trying to, that's also why we use the term of openness of the internet use to try and avoid possible confusion with openness of the internet access. The first finding is that for this discussion, the software side of devices is actually more relevant than the hardware side of devices. And so we saw that there's a growing importance of the app format, and as such, there is the development of a gatekeeper role for app stores. We try and list the potential limitation that we observed, and we found that actually most of the limitations that we identify were kind of unavoidable, because they either derive from technical constraint, or they are required to provide a smooth and simplified experience for the end users. But some other limitation, although they are rather hypothetical at this stage, they could have the capacity to be concerning. So, for example, at the app stores level, here you have the possibility to pick and choose the content that is published and made available to end users. We consider that this issue remains not too concerning as long as end users have the possibility to turn to a satisfying alternative app store that is open. Because in this situation, if consumers stay in a restricted environment, it could simply reflect their personal preferences. We also said that in theory, there could be incentives for a dominant OS provider to limit openness of the internet use on their product. Because, for example, it could be financially interesting to filter apps based on commercial partnerships. On the other hand, this effect could also be possibly counterbalanced by incentives to maximize consumers' use of the device. We elaborate further on that in the report. So in light of all this, what we propose at this stage is to simply monitor the evolution of the market, This could be done either by NRAs, by NCAs, or by any other relevant authority. As technology rapidly evolves in this sector, we thought that light touch options that are based on the publication of collected or crowdsourced data could be a well-fitted possibility to explore, because it would help empower consumers, and it would also have the benefit to have low administrative costs, which is important for a new entrant. Thanks.
Thank you, Anaïs. So as you see, BEREC wants to broaden a little bit the picture of the open internet, not only to the access, but also to the use of the internet. But in the same time, there is no confusion about the kind of regulation or responsibility of telecom regulators about this. And the idea is more to ensure, to follow the market by a kind of monitoring that can be done depending on national circumstances by different agencies or authorities. Okay, and now I move to our third chapter, which is reinventing BEREC from within. But actually, we will begin with the review, which is more about potentially reinventing things from without or outside. First of all, I would like to make an update about BEREC's work regarding the framework review. And so you know that there have been several expressions in the last days from the Ethno, from ECTA, and several entrepreneurs from FTTH Council, from the BERC, from different stakeholders. At BEREC level, you know, we have issues, technical papers, so we are not in the mood to have any broad public intervention regarding the review. But we discussed in Bucharest about the last proposal from the Estonian presidency on one specific point that raised deep concern for regulator, which is the question of the minimum set of competencies for independent NRAs in the code. And so we have decided on a common statement that has been adopted at the unanimity at our plenary in Bucharest on that subject. And without being long and formal, I will read it to you right now. In September 2016, BEREC warmly welcomed the Commission's proposal to provide NRAs with a common minimum set of competencies and to threaten their independence. The Commission's proposal builds on the experience gained from 3 decades of telecom regulation and caters to the future of the electronic communications in Europe as a competitive industry. At a time when significant investment in network is required and the digitalization of the industry is underway, the promotion of the internal market should be a high priority for Europe at the core of both the current sectoral review and the wider digital single market strategy. By building on the independent technical expertise they have developed over the years, NRAs are best placed to contribute effectively to the promotion of the internal market. First point, independence is critical. The independence of NRAs, both from industry and government, ensures that all market players will be treated fairly and even-handedly, and provides for regulatory predictability to support long-term investment and innovation by incumbents and competitors alike. It also ensures that all regulators share the same objective analytical approach based on their legal, technical, and economic expertise, which enables them to push common solutions. Second, regulatory harmonization requires a common set of competencies. As the sector is primed to make significant investment. Transparency, predictability, and consistency in the regulatory environment are more important than ever when it comes to promoting infrastructure deployment and ensuring market access. Common regulatory approaches that count for national circumstances are crucial to ensuring that regulation is efficient and proportionate. Progressive regulatory harmonization based on the development and sharing of best practices drawn from the real life experience of regulating national markets is in many cases the most appropriate and sustainable way to develop the internal market. But the potential for such harmonization depends on the NRAs around the table having the right set of competencies, of common competencies. Only an effective and common set of competencies, as proposed by the Commission, can ensure an informed and productive exchange at European level and thereby the achievement of tangible progress toward the completion of the internal market. Indeed, in those areas where NRAs have shared a common set of competencies, BEREC has had a strong track record in pursuing regulatory convergence, with a positive impact on European markets and the promotion of better and more targeted regulation. See, for instance, the fall of in the number of phase 2 procedures over the last 8 years, the production of net neutrality guidelines, BEREC's role in the development, and now the implementation of the new international roaming rules. Fragmentation of functions not only endangers further progress, but also puts at risk common achievements. Third and last, regulatory competencies are increasingly interlinked. While ex-ante market regulation was the original core competence of NRAs going back 15 years, it is increasingly difficult to dissociate such supply-side regulation from the exercise of other powers, such as, for example, the demand-side levers provided under the framework. Indeed, it is unsurprising that the Commission is proposing to broaden NRA's duty not only to promote the development of very high-capacity networks, but also their take-up. Ultimately, the promotion of investment and competition are intended to serve the interests of end users. BEREC remains fully committed to supporting the co-legislators during the negotiation on the code. Thank you for your attention. So to make it short, we consider that the proposal that has been circulated is a nonsense. And now, just to finish about our update regarding the review. No, I've said everything, sorry. Okay. So now I give the floor, but I'm sure you will have questions about BEREC and the review. And now I give the floor to Johannes to present us the midterm strategy of BEREC and the draft program for next year.
Okay, thank you very much, Sébastien. Hello, everybody. Please see it as a kind of backing Sébastien, and in particular the statement he has now read, that I'm here. It is a sign of continuity that despite the fact that the chairman of BEREC is changing every year, we are absolutely aligned, and as Sébastien said, this statement was approved in an unanimous way, so we strongly feel that the concern with the proposal tabled by the Council. So we are united here to reinforce that a common set of competences is key to the industry and to the whole sector and to the citizens of Europe. So, but my main topic today is now the work program for 2018 and the midterm strategy that we adopted last week in Bucharest. So this is mainly what we will work next year on, and I'm looking forward to working with you together in a fruitful dialogue and I'm happy to get your feedback. We will publish today the work program for next year for consultation, and I'm inviting you to comment as much as possible so that we get a work program that is well fitted to the challenges ahead of us. In 2014, BEREC has adopted a midterm strategy, and then at that time we laid down 3 overarching principles on which we wanted to base the yearly work programs. The 3 principles were promoting competition and investment, promoting the internal market, and empowering and protecting end users. So these 3 principles are of course still valid, but we thought that we have to reflect the fast, rapidly changing technological environment in our midterm strategy, and therefore to update BEREC strategy for the challenges to come. And we have now found 5 strategic priorities for the years 2018 to 2020. We have made it together with you. We had made a 2-step consultation. We collected input from your side, and we have also made a consultation on the draft. Thank you very much for your input. And we have detected 5 strategic priorities. And in order to illustrate what we understand on each of the strategic priorities, I will come immediately to the work program we plan for next year, so that you get a better understanding what we mean by each priority. Number 1 is responding to connectivity challenges and to new conditions for access to high capacity networks. What we want to do under this chapter is to take a closer look into an area where we work for a very long time on. This is in the core of the whole regulatory work we are doing on access, and we want to look next year more into access to physical infrastructure. We want to take a closer look into the pricing for the access to physical infrastructure. One of the key issues is the question of replicability, and we want to assess what replicability means in the context of symmetric access. And we will most likely look into an update of our common position on market 3A, 3B, and 4. We will have a workshop there to discuss potential changes of this common position. Number 2, second strategic priority is monitoring potential bottlenecks in the distribution of digital services. Under this chapter, we try to a certain extent to broaden the view on the market and on the technical development. So we will have a look into what we call data economy, where potential new bottlenecks could arise. And so we are broadening our view of the world, and we want to monitor that side, find out what are potential bottlenecks in that area. We will work on the definition of the location of the network termination point. This is crucial for consumers and businesses, and depending on the definition of the termination point of the network, that decides whether or not a customer can use his own devices and modems and so on. And we will also look at IoT indicators, what should we monitor, if anything, and how to define certain indicators that we get a good picture of what is going on in this area, and to find the right steps in case we have to step in. The third strategic priority is enabling 5G and promoting innovation in network technologies. And indeed, 5G will be one of the focus areas for next year. We as BEREC want to, we see ourselves as enablers, We don't know whether this technology will deliver all that is now discussed. There are a lot of nice stories out there. It's not yet standardized. We don't know what will happen, but we see ourselves as enabler for innovation, and therefore we want to remove on time the hurdles for a quick and a coherent rollout of 5G networks. And so we will we will make a workshop together with other stakeholders on 5G, IoT, and security issues. And we will tackle in particular, from our point of view, the most important issues on 5G. Number one, spectrum award, and number two, rollout of the networks. And therefore we will make a best practice, a report on spectrum authorization and award procedures with a view to 5G. And second, we will look into infrastructure sharing. I think when we see that the rollout of small cells will be of critical importance, we have to take a fresh look at infrastructure sharing and find out what's the right way forward to support the rollout and the deployment of 5G networks. And we will also look into coverage obligations, because traditionally we talked about population coverage. Now maybe area coverage will be much more important than it was in the past, thinking of IoT and agrotech and so on and so on. The fourth strategic priority is fostering a consistent approach of the net neutrality principles. We have had a report already from Frode on the net neutrality measurement tool. Of course, we will work next year on that. We will have a close look and we will monitor the implementation of the net neutrality regulation to facilitate a coherent approach and consistent approach across Europe. And we will make input to an evaluation of the net neutrality rules that has to be done by the European Commission until the end of April 2019. And in this context, we will take a closer look, and that refers to the 5G priority we have. We will take a close look whether or not there are some contradictions or the need for clarification between 5G and net neutrality. I'm referring here to the network slicing issue. So we want to have an on-time look on this issue. And the last strategic priority is exploring new ways to boost consumer empowerment. And there we will make a report on the termination of contracts and switching of customers. We will try to make a best practice report on choice for disabled end users and the equivalence of access. And we will make a report on contractual simplification, which should lead into a single European information sheet for customers. So these are the 5 strategic priorities that we will address with our work program next year. And what I want to stress here is that besides the 5G focus we have next year, of course, and in many of our work items, we will have the topic of harmonization. We want to drive that. And we are also committed to enhance our communication with stakeholders, and we want to make increase and improve our exchange with outside stakeholders. In particular, we will prepare an open data platform, because we are collecting a lot of data, and we want to give it back, if feasible, to the market, that you can make your own analysis. So what I can do now is invite you to give us your comments on the work program so that we can, in case, adjust it, amend it, and that we have a work program in place for next year that fits not only to our needs, but also to the needs of the industry and the European citizens. Well, that's it from my side. The consultation will be from today to the 8th of November, and looking forward to your comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johannes. And let me remind you that we organized next week, the 18th, our Stakeholder Forum in Brussels in the afternoon, and there will be a specific floor dedicated to the discussion about next year's work program after a presentation by Johannes Gungl. Thanks a lot. And before opening to questions, yes, a reminder about different documents that we are publishing today. I just want to turn your attention to the report we published on the study trip we had in India with the mini board this year, and it was really interesting. So please enjoy. And of course, we publish different documents about RUP interconnection practices, about sharing passive optical networks, so quite a technical question, but interesting report also, regulatory accounting, and our roaming BEREC benchmark data report. Thanks a lot. And so what's next for our next plenary? The next plenary will take place in Copenhagen in the first days of December. I will not go into details about our document. I just want to turn your attention on one topic, which is the publication of BEREC reports on the implementation of net neutrality rules. You know that we NRAs every of us has to publish a report about the implementation of net neutrality at national level, but we felt at BEREC level that it may be useful, even if it's not mandatory in the legal framework, to have also a European report about the implementation. And so we are working on this, and we will issue this at next plenary. Thank you very much for your attention. And now I open the floor to questions. Yeah, please.
Oh, thank you. Hello, I'm Yves Blondel of T-Rex. Just a technical question on the 18th of October stakeholder meeting. You say we will discuss the work program. So you will expect us to give comments on the work program there, or is it more a presentation style?
We will have a dedicated Q&A session.
Yeah, because we have to prepare answers by the 8th of November, so that's quite short, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's for oral discussion, so we don't ask you to have a formal position at the stakeholder forum.
Hi, Dean Bubley from Disruptive Analysis. There was a reference on one of the slides on challenge areas for connectivity about private mobile networks. Is that also going to be something that is going to touch on the work being done on spectrum, particularly for spectrum sharing, or thoughts on a US CPRS type model in Europe or anything like that?
Maybe, Blaise, you can clarify about the scope of the report?
Yeah, I didn't quite get the question. If you could say it again, please.
Yeah, one of that top bullet point refers to private mobile networks under indoor coverage, or is that purely in building, or does that cover on site? So for industrial use, and what can we expect there?
Well, it's really in the indoor section. and the possibility, actually, in some countries, there is possibility to access a small part of spectrum in a license-free access for organization. There would be different, can be operators or somebody else, some operators, to really build a small network to provide the connectivity indoor. I guess the solution is also possible for outdoor, but it's really as a solution, presented as a solution for indoor coverage there. And I guess in the report you will have some little details, but if you want to have further details on that, the best is to look to see with the NRAs of the corresponding countries.
Does it answer to your question? Yeah? Okay. The limit of the exercise, once again, is that we are working in the current framework where NRAs are not dealing with spectrum issues specifically. So that is why we have issued this report with the RSPG. So it's a question of balance about the subjects.
Yeah, I think this is an important topic. And we want to clarify that what we do on 5G next year should not overlap with what RSPG is doing or double the work. We want to stay within our competencies, and this is on market shaping. And we will, if we look in award procedures, we look at, in particular, on the market shaping details of award procedures like spectrum caps and floors, coverage obligation, reservation of spectrum for newcomers, and so on. So the typical we call it market shaping aspects of award procedures. And we will base our work on the work done by RSPG, and we will involve them as well in the work.
Hi, Francesco Versace from Vodafone. One question on the work program and on the work stream on potential bottlenecks in the distribution of digital services. I guess there will be more details in the work program, but anyways, will the focus be on ECS or will be broader on other digital services as well?
Let's see, we have not in detail defined the deliverable, but I think it will be a little bit broader if necessary.
The philosophy behind this chapter is to have the opportunity to go a little bit further the classical framework. So it will depend on what is it.
Is this okay? It works now. So Erzsébet Fitori from the FTTH Council Europe. I have a question on a topic which I think was not mentioned today. So on the next steps, basically after the framework review, which is a big piece of work, but in parallel already the Commission is working on a review of the SMP guidelines. Obviously, the public consultation is over, and the summary of the responses has been published by the European Commission. But I wonder, I mean, this must be a very important issue for regulators. So I wonder whether BEREC or individual NRAs foresee any additional pieces of work on the review of the SMP guidelines.
Yes, of course, it's an important topic. So you know that BEREC has taken position regarding through technical papers about what could be useful in the review regarding these questions to be able to tackle all the competitive situation in Europe. The Commission will potentially issue a project at some time, and then we will work concretely on this project. So we are I mean, we depend on the agenda of the Commission in this situation. Maybe Anaïs, if you want to add something about this? No?
Let me first add what I didn't mention, also because of the timing. Of course, there is increasing workload in each work program every year on work we have to do, and we reserved, of course, resources for work on the framework. We have, of course, foreseen something for SMP guidelines and other input on topics for the EU Commission for the weighted average of termination rates and transparency on roaming tariffs, etc., etc. So there is a whole bunch of work streams dedicated to this, let's say, mandatory work we have to do.
Yeah, maybe the only thing that I can add is that the standard procedure is that what we expect is the European Commission is going to publish a draft of the revised SMP guidelines, and we are to provide a response and an analysis on the actual draft that is that should be published at some point by the European Commission.
If there is no other question, I will answer to the Twitter questions. Let's go. Can you read it, please? Yeah.
Yes, we have a first question from Ariane at Quota Atypique. And the question is, what is your position regarding the reform of your institution? Do you think you have the tools and independence to work? And actually, there are two other questions from the same person. The side question, what can be improved? And the next question is, and of course, what is your position regarding the code, the draft code, and the concurrence and society model it involves?
Okay, regarding independence, I think the paper, the statement that we published today is really clear about the fact that we consider that the proposal from the Commission to both boost independence and define a minimum set of competence is really the good way to really anchor independent regulation in the framework. And we consider that any step back would really be terrible in terms of signal, and would really be against the DNA of all regulation in Europe. Regarding the society model of the code, it's quite tricky to answer this question because it's a little bit general. But regarding the person it comes from, I would say that in terms of competition, I know that in several countries there is a call for even more competition than today, and to give the opportunity to very, very small players to enter the market. I would say that the philosophy of the code and the proposal from the Commission is rather to focus even more regulation on the real competitive problem and not really to reopen it. So I think that this philosophy is a strong direction in the proposals from the Commission. Other questions?
Yes, there is a second question from Rosalind Layton. What does developing the NN detection tool cost?
Yeah,
actually, there's a second question, not about BEREC, but what about Ofcom traffic management study?
Okay. I will give the floor to Laszlo from the office about the cost of the tool, but what I can tell you is that having a common tool will be really, really much cheaper than having 28 different tools. Please, Laszlo.
Thank you very much. So it is going to be an open tender, a procurement procedure, as it was presented already before. It will be launched next year. That open tender procurement will cover the three main elements. One is the software development, the other is the delivery and the installation of the reference system, and operation and maintenance service for multiple years. So the final price of this whole package will be known after the tender will be closed, because the price will be one element in the tender itself. The maximum ceiling that was set by the plenary meeting last week is 250,000 euros for this whole package for multiple years. This is what I can say at this time, but definitely the final price will be lower than this, because that will be the maximum ceiling for the whole procurement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laszlo. Yes.
Oliver Fuchs from Actor. Johannes mentioned during his speak about next year's work program the issue of examining replicability in the context of symmetric access regulation. And I just wanted to hear you on whether in the context of the review that the Commission is going to be undertaking of the SMP guidelines, you're envisaging adding something from that perspective to the guidance. Is that work that BEREC has already carried out, or will it be work that will feed into your input on the SMP revision? Thank you.
I think we are not there when it comes to what exactly we will give input to the SMP guidelines. We detect this as a very hot topic, and in the day-to-day work of our colleagues, this is of rising, not concern, but of rising interest. So we are not there yet to specify what of those topics we will touch also on the SMP guidelines. To be fair, maybe you can.
Okay, I hope it answers the question. Yeah. Okay, no other question? Yes?
So Luc Hendricks from ECTA. In any case, thank you very much for all the explanation and all the documents and the work you gave us, so we know what to do in the coming weeks. First, a small question. I assume that if the web tool would not work, we can still work via email. Certainly for association, it's probably the best way to do, and you also need to make sure that the web tool does not limit our ability to answer, and on that we rely on BEREC to be the shield. I saw that your logo has been put on the shield, so I like the image, but again, practices that would bring us to less transparency, and I would refer to the way that the consultation on SMP guideline was put on the market, because the questionnaire already indicates the direction. The two other questions I have, and are more related to the work of next year and the work program. I was wondering why BEREC would not, considering what you represent and your powers you have to access to data, you would not engage in ground discussions about what's now drives investments, or financial markets react on that and so on, because there are so many things that are said that are intellectually completely wrong. And you would have the powers to come with, first you have the money, and after you have the powers to come with facts and figures that could demonstrate probably in a more neutral way what would happen. And the second element, considering that there are deployments of networks everywhere in Europe, that there is so many actual data that you could also collect the data and come with facts and figures to demonstrate that, yeah, maybe all the numbers and all what has been said so far is not what it is. And there you are really, as I said, the powers and the possibility to put the church in the middle, as we would say in French. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you in the principle. I mean, it's true that sometimes we hear weird things about the drivers of the market. Actually, we are in a working process about an impact study regarding several mergers over Europe. So this is something we are still working on. Maybe if Anaïs can tell 2 words about this. And we have been participating to some works from the GSMA about the impact. I don't remember investment competition, this kind of thing, quality of service. So I will let Anaïs answer about this. But your point is interesting. I mean, about why not being more proactive about putting data on the table. I guess maybe that some would say that we would be lobbying. It is an expression that has been used recently. But more seriously, on the scientific point of view, I mean, I agree about the fact that there are certainly things to do. But well, we have a quite comprehensive work program also. So if you want to complete.
Yeah. First of all, of course, we are more focused on the quality of the input, but on the channel that it is coming in. So feel free to use any means. So use a letter, yeah, traditional. We don't care. So there is no need to use the public consultation tools. And on the facts and figures, yeah, in principle you are right, but in the day-to-day business we have a lot of data, but most of the time we are not allowed to use this data outside the purpose we have collected it. So this is maybe not satisfying, but that's a fact. And indeed, if you have data, for instance, then it depends upon the definitions of the data you've collected, and the usage is not always possible for a completely other purpose. But in principle, I agree, and I can only emphasize what Sébastien said. Yeah. We hear interesting stories nowadays, what drives investment, and be assured that we try to put things into perspective and fight at least the weirdest ideas.
Yes, that's one of the work stream of the market economic analysis expert working group to try and analyze. We're trying to conduct econometric analysis of the impact on prices of the merger that took place in Austria, in Ireland, in Germany, and we're trying to conduct this kind of quantitative analysis that is not usually what is done in BEREC, but we're trying to also to do that. But it also has its own difficulties. But if we're hoping to try and go further in this direction if we can in the future. It could be interesting to do that, but. As Johannes said, it's everyone has its own data. It's not always compatible. So you also have to actually for this study we had to go through how do you call that, contractor to collect the like homogeneous data and stuff. So it's not as straightforward, but that's also the kind of thing we're interested in.
So very good idea, tricky in practice, but why not? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for coming here, and I hope you enjoy the IRG premise, and see you at the next public debriefing, but see you at the Stakeholder Forum prior to that, I hope. And thank you very much to all the participants. Bye-bye.